Mark Osten and Lee Benson. I'm Eric Horlick, and we've just concluded the 2018 TorontoCourse on congenital and structural heart disease, and we wanted to just take a minute to describe our feelings about the course and what our intention was in actually putting it on. So, Lee, maybe you could talk about who this course is really for.
Yeah, well, it's a very unique experience for the attendees. The course framework was to focus on early career interventional cardiologists who are involved with congenital heart disease and structural heart disease, with the focus on techniques and a environment where there's interaction amongst the attendees in a variety of different formats.
So, I think really an important part of this is really having the right people as the faculty, because for this type of meeting that we have kept small and intimate on purpose to allow that interaction, you've got to have the highest quality faculty. And maybe, Mark, you want to make some comments about that.
Yeah, so Eric, I think you're right on there. So we were fortunate to have key opinion leaders from actually all around the world. It was an international faculty in the key fields of structural heart disease and congenital heart disease intervention. We had John Carroll, for instance, who is an expert in and the primary investigator in the largest trial looking at PFO closures, for instance. We had Saibal Kar from Cedars-Sinai, who essentially has the largest experience, arguably, with mitral clip procedures and left atrial appendage closure procedures, giving great cases and great presentations on those subjects. Ziad Hijazi, who is an exceptional teacher and is known to essentially write the textbook on congenital and pediatric intervention, and essentially runs the largest course for those topics at a course that's run yearly that we actually are fortunate to attend. And Zahid Amin, who has done decades of work on evaluating risk for ASD closure. So just to name a few of our faculty, and Matt Crystal, Simran Singh, who are experts in their field and work at large academic institutions in New York. And so really just a star faculty, altogether. And we're very fortunate. And needless to say, yourself and Lee Benson as well, who are experts in their field. So I mean, we were really lucky to have such a great field.
And also, in keeping with the idea that we really want to tailor this to the early career person, what better person than the president of Pisces, Nathaniel Taggart, who's at the Mayo Clinic and who's just a phenomenal, young, talented guy. I think that the format for these meetings is also really important because, while lectures are a really important way to transmit information, you can really do so much more with a small group that you really can't do with a very large meeting. And Lee, maybe you could just speak to that.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I think the intimacy of small group meetings such as this underscores and supports the way people interact and think about the cases that they are, or the challenges that they see every day. And it's a dialogue that allows them to get a perspective on how to treat the patients using the latest information that they can glean from experts in the field. So it's a very rewarding. I think the attendees like this kind of format because it's interactive and it's very personal, as opposed to these larger meetings which have a different focus, where they're in a large room with hundreds of people listening to a lecture. Here it's an intimate type of personal relationship to being able to ask questions about a variety of different topics and difficult cases.
And also, just from a format point of view, we've got workshops, small groups, senior mentors, one-on-one interaction where it's like 5 or 6 people with somebody who's been on the podium for the last 20 years, who you can just say, hey, I don't get that, or hey, can you just explain that a bit more? Debates, which I think are a lot of fun, to be
Yes.
very honest,
Yes.
because I think people really enjoy the competition. And also a couple things that we try new every year, like having a couple of lawyers come and talk about malpractice issues in intervention and how to stay out of trouble and be a good doctor. I think those are great. And we also had a physiotherapist come and talk about how to maintain your body during your career, how to not stress your spine, and how to not end up, really debilitated and unable to work. So Mark, maybe you could talk about just some of the topics or the topic areas that we covered during the course.
Sure. So, we're gearing this towards both adult and pediatric, structural specialists. So you really have to take into account their interests as well and what they're going to be doing, most of the time during their career. So our workshops and our sessions were quite varied because of that. So, for instance, we had a session on left heart interventions, which would include, for instance, TAVI and left atrial appendage closure. Those are geared a little more towards the adult congenital early career. And then we had right-sided heart interventions, such as dealing with pulmonary valve implants percutaneously or stenting in the pulmonary arteries. And that's more commonly performed by the pediatric interventional community. ASDs is one that's actually pretty equal across the board, where pediatric and adult interventionists are quite interested in, and we had a number of sessions about that, including a workshop by Zahid Amin, which at least from looking at the evaluations was fantastic. And also great cases all around in all those subjects. So I think we tried to make it uniform throughout and really try and dive into these topics that at least would be targeted to the whole group and not just one specific group in particular, whether they be pediatric and adult. And that was a challenge for us, and I think we succeeded.
I think that the experience of putting on the meeting, as you begin the iterative process of putting on the meeting, you kind of choose the talks or the titles of the talks very carefully. So, Saibal talks about, 10 things that he's learned over almost 1,000 MitraClip patients. I mean, that's really important stuff. That's high yield stuff. At this meeting, which is a practical interventional meeting, really what we want to give the participants is new skills, how to get out of trouble, how to do things the right way the first time. I think that the environment of this tight interaction with the faculty, having the faculty around the whole day, sitting in the meeting, at lunch, at dinner, really provides this unique interactive experience.
Yes, absolutely. I think that that's one of the jewels of this meeting and the importance of this kind of a format. I think also, being a pediatric interventional cardiologist, there's an enormous amount of overlap between the things that the adult structural interventionalist does and the pediatric cardiologist does. And I think that you may talk about left atrial appendage closure and understand the focus on the older adult with diseases that we really don't see as pediatricians. But in actual fact, there's a lot to be said about the technique of transeptal entry to the left atrium, which is a technique that's necessary for LAA occlusion, and it's a procedure that the pediatric cardiologists do fairly frequently as well. So although on paper it may seem, well, it's a little bit off to what we may normally do, the technical aspects are interesting to both groups.
I think that's a great point. For instance, transeptal puncture is something that is being utilized, all across the field. So, that's a subject that I actually noticed people were quite interested in. And the fact of the matter is that, when I did do a survey at the end of the talk, it was interesting to see that the amount of people doing more than 15 to 20 transeptals a year is actually quite small. And so it's always useful for us with our exit questions, so that next year we can work on better subjects for people and maybe more interactive in those areas.
I also think the addition this year of the poll everywhere, which was basically an audience response system.
Yeah.
We asked all the faculty to prepare questions before and after their lectures, and I was actually shocked at, first of all, having the faculty actually complied, which is a big thing, but second of all, how interested people were to actually respond, and actually the learning experience of actually being forced to answer questions. And you know, the beauty of this system is you answer on your phone and you see the results immediately on the slide. So I think that was an addition as well. I think that all of us, I think all of us had a great time. I think it was a great experience for all of us, and I think certainly we hope the moons and the planets align and we can keep doing this and put on another great show next year.
Absolutely.
So on behalf of all of us, thank you very much.
Take care. Thanks.
Yes, absolutely.